Hey guys, Stephanie Joy here from Joy Disability. um, just wanted to touch on the misconception that a medical condition or diagnosis that is a significant one is going to win a case because you have a serious diagnosis. Not true. You need the diagnosis to get to the next step in the sequential evaluation process, but the diagnosis itself isn't going to win the case. With the pseudo exception of compassionate allowances, of which there are not that many relative to the amount of diagnoses out there. And even with a compassionate allowance, you still have to have the current evidence of current treatment and certain criteria met for that to stand. Okay, so what does this mean? Diagnosis isn't going to matter. It matters. It's one of the first steps in the evaluation process that the SSA must go forward with. You have to have valid diagnosis, one or more. More diagnoses obviously might produce more impairments and limitations functionally. And the diagnosis has to be diagnosed in an acceptable manner. And it typically is, so that's not something that I would really worry about. If you were diagnosed with something many years ago before you became disabled, and by the way, that's why diagnoses don't win a case, because most people have diagnoses and they work for years thereafter. It's when the diagnosis of this, the medically determinable impairment, MDI, once it's determined to be a severe one, which that's not a huge burden either, I might add, that's never our big fight. Once that happens and it starts limiting the person enough that it eliminates their current job is when they tend to either be terminated because they couldn't function well enough to satisfactorily perform the job duties. And by the way, there's a video on getting a statement from your employer about that, which can be really helpful. But also, they get out of the first job, then they have to actually, if they have a case, then they have to prove that their impairments prevent all jobs. So that's a whole nother term of art and a whole bunch of legal input, factual and legal input that goes into proving that if it's so. Okay, so the diagnosis itself, again, is not going to be the deciding factor. It's just going to get you across into the next yes in the tree of yes, no's. If yes, you're disabled, or if yes, you're not disabled. It gets you down to where they'll still consider your case versus knocking it out because there's nothing more than a diagnosis. So the diagnosis being currently treated for now, not 2 years ago only, now. I mean, it's nice if it was treated with some duration, for sure. That's more longevity, and durational records are best. But you can't win unless it's now, generally speaking. So you need to be treating for that impairment. And of course, as you'll see in my other videos, treat for every other little one too, not just the one that took you out of your job, because it took you out of one job out of 12,000 that you have to prove you can't do. But those other little impairments that you don't really think about much because you can do workarounds and not have to use that limb or that finger or that this or that. They're the ones that can actually make your case be a winnable one. Because remember, you can't prove, it's not like workers' comp where you prove that you're 70% impaired. It's a totally different definition. And we have to prove that there are zero, for all intents and purposes, zero occupations we can do full time. So even if we could do some activities part-time, that doesn't count against you, unilaterally, but that we can't do the job that exists in substantial numbers in the economy full-time. So if we can do one job out there that there's only 2 of them in the entire country, that's probably not going to be considered substantial numbers. So it's a whole, more of an official number, a numbering, and they have the vocational experts provide the numbers. They use the dictionary of occupational titles and other resources to find out the supposed numbers in the economy. The information is often very outdated. There was a big news article about that finally, what we've been complaining about for a long time. But anyway, so the medical records from your current treatment are not only going to say that there's a diagnosis, but they're also going to, if your doctor is, in my opinion, properly doing his job, or your NP or whoever, describing how they affect you day to day, because, let's face it, a diagnosis of something that is not terminal and doesn't affect us much, who really cares? I'm diagnosed with a freckle up here, but it doesn't bother me. Is it an impairment of sorts? Sure. But it's not, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't limit my work effort. So, I mean, it might if I was going to be like a porcelain model or something, but I'm not. So it doesn't knock out all these substantial jobs. So you have to have current treatment with all of those diagnoses for your strongest case. Any that you forego and decide is too inconvenient to treat for, just know that you are diminishing the strength of your case. Doesn't mean you might not still win by any means, but you have diminished the strength of it by and large. So diagnosis won't get you there. It's how the functional limitations are caused, to what extent, how severely, and is it enough to prevent all occupations? Simple, sedentary, 5th grade skills, unstressful, supposedly. I think all jobs are stressful, but anyway, that's not how they look at it. Routine, 1-step, 2-step, for those that can't remember very well. We got to eliminate all those jobs one way or another. So diagnosis, treatment, diagnostic test, treatment. Can I emphasize it anymore? Anyway, diagnosis isn't going to win it. You have to treat, and you have to treat with certain providers, not certain providers, certain professionals for a stronger case. Some professionals are acceptable medical evidence, some are not. So you need to know the difference. So do your homework or find someone who can do it for you. Okay. All righty. Hope that helps. Bye.